Barakim Habarim. Welcome to Messianic Moment Ministries. I'm Stephen Bruck. You know who you are, and today is the 12th day of March 2026. Many passages from the Bible have a special meaning pretty much all on their own, but we should always be cautious when taking a single verse or a passage out of context. Now, to this case today, I believe the message for today on this one passage is actually correct in that it's keeping with the overall gist of God's Word. By the way, if you haven't done so, please, let's get the admin stuff out of the way. Click that little red box there, subscribe, hit the little mail thing, the little bell, and get notifications. You know how to do all that stuff. Also, go back to messianicmoment.com and subscribe there as well, both YouTube and the website, the different lists. The more people that subscribe, the more exposure this ministry gets. So I really appreciate that. And, you can mark notifications and be notified when I post, or just look now and then, whatever. Also, when you're on Facebook, like my page and join my group. It's called Just God's Word. It doesn't cost you anything. Hey, and if you like what you get here, you're going to love my books. Now, that will cost you a little bit, but they're pretty reasonably priced. You can get them through links on the website or go to Amazon.com, put Stephen R. Bruck in the search field, and boom, they're all there. It's only $5, so you can buy them all. What the heck? They make great Christmas presents. Anyway, or Hanukkah presents. One last thing, please, again, share these messages with everyone. It really helps. All right, so to start off, let's review the chapter, Matthew 5. Yeshua is teaching all about heaven and about the way people should be acting. He goes through the Beatitudes, which are affectionately called the Beatitudes. And immediately, he precedes this passage we're going to talk about today by telling us he did not come to change anything. He's not changing any of the Torah laws, but he's fulfilling them. But what it meant back then is fulfilling the laws meant to interpret them correctly. And you see that throughout this whole chapter. He's interpreting the laws. He specifically tells us that nothing will change until everything that must happen is accomplished. In other words, what he's saying is until the Acharit HaYamim, those end days, or also known as the apocalypse, until that's done, all those bowls of wrath are poured out, everything's destroyed, whatever, and you see a new earth and there's a new Jerusalem being lowered from heaven. Well, until that time, the Torah is completely intact, valid, and necessary. I know that freaks out a lot of Christians who have been lied to about this passage. But that's just too darn bad. The Torah is for everyone who professes to worship the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and who believes Yeshua, Jesus, is the Messiah that God promised to send. Hey, like it or not. So now that we know the context of where this passage comes from, let's look at the passage itself. And this is from the Complete Jewish Bible. So whoever disobeys the least of these mitzvot, that means laws, and teaches others to do so will be called the least in the kingdom of heaven. But whoever obeys them and so teaches will be called great in the kingdom of heaven. All right, the message seems pretty clear. Those who fail to teach the Torah will be considered least in the kingdom of heaven. But those who teach the Torah, which this ministry does, will be called great in heaven. All right, one thing we need to realize. People don't go to heaven, all right? Remember, I know everybody thinks they're going to, but no, we don't go to heaven. Those who are saved through faith in Yeshua and obedience to the Torah as best as you can, nobody can be perfect, those people get to stay on the new earth. So if he's talking about people being considered least and great in the kingdom of heaven, I think he's talking about people who must be somewhere else. And that somewhere else doesn't have to be on the earth. It could certainly be in Sheol. And that makes sense to me because, how can someone who teaches to ignore the Torah ever get to be in heaven or considered heavenly? The Torah defines sin. And if you teach to ignore the Torah, then you are, in effect, teaching people how to sin. And that certainly won't get you in good standing with God. I think everybody can agree on that. So those who've accepted Yeshua as their Messiah and teach others to obey the Torah are going to not only be saved, living on the new earth in God's presence forever, but they're also going to be considered great by God, Yeshua, and all the angelic hosts. In other words, you got to have a really good rep with the angels. That also means those who, whether accepting Yeshua as their Messiah or not, if you teach to ignore the Torah, you're not going to be in God's presence. And when the angelic hosts speak of you, angels will consider you less than valuable or worthy of anything. And that'll also be how you're viewed by God and Yeshua. Personally, I'm not as concerned with how I am perceived in heaven as I am about being saved. For all I care, they can consider me one of the least important or spiritual of all those who are saved, just so long as I am saved. I'm more than happy to be relegated to just sleep outside of the tabernacle, like Joshua did, just so long as I am where it is. So let this passage be a warning to all who have been taught, especially those who teach, that the Torah is only for Jews, and Gentiles accepting Yeshua as the Messiah do not have to concern themselves with it. No. It doesn't matter what form of justification you're given by your religious leaders, because Yeshua himself says that they are considered least by God and all of the heavenly hosts. And I think we can agree that, there's no one who outranks Yeshua. Consider this. The Torah is, it's God's user manual for righteousness. And Yeshua proved that. How? Well, he lived his life in complete obedience to it, and he was resurrected. That's how you get resurrected. Since none of us can live in complete obedience to it, thanks to Yeshua, through him we can be resurrected. But God tells us how to worship him and how to treat each other in the Torah. So why would he tell Gentiles being grafted onto the very tree God planted that, you don't have to do any of that stuff? Why would Yeshua show us how to live a Torah-observant life just to say, hey, now that I did it, you don't have to? Makes no sense. The Torah is God's laws. So if we do not live by them, then we are, by definition, lawless. And which one of you really thinks that the lawless are going to be saved? Oh, yeah. And here's one last thing. If you're going to parrot repeat that ridiculous justification that there are some laws which are moral and some ceremonial, and Gentiles only have to obey the moral laws, remember what James said in James 2:10 in his letter. He said that to break one law is the same as breaking them all. And who is to say which is moral and which is not? I mean, isn't God moral? And if God is moral, then isn't everything he says we should do morally correct? Look, you choose which laws you will follow if you want to, but as for me, I'm going to try my best to be as obedient to the Torah as I can be. Like I said, no one can ever be as obedient as Yeshua. Because when I meet God, I want to be able to say, I tried to be as you want me to be. How do you think God's going to react to the ones who can only say, I didn't do what you said because, they told me I didn't have to? Thank you for being here. And please remember to share these messages with everyone you know, even non-believers. Hey, after all, you never know how fertile the soil is until you plant a seed in it. All right, that's it for this week. So, Lihitrot, and let me wish you an early Shabbat Shalom.